A shadow beside us. The wind howls through a cave mouth. Inside, ancient footprints lie pressed into hardened sediment wide, strong, human-like, but not quite, not ours. These are not the steps of Homo sapiens. They belong to another species, one that lived alongside us, one that hunted, made tools, buried its dead, and looked into fire just as we did. For over 300 years they walked this earth, and for most of that time, we didn't exist. They are Neanderthals, and they nearly became us. For most of our species history, we were not alone. The world was once filled with different kinds of humans: Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis, denisovans, and others we've barely begun to understand. But among them, one stood closest. Neanderthal stockier, stronger, with brains as large or larger than ours. They thrived across Ice Age, Europe, and Western Asia. They hunted mammoths, painted caves, and may have spoken in complex language. And for a time, they didn't just survive, they thrived. Until we arrived. Homo sapiens new, fast-spreading, and culturally explosive emerged from Africa and met their cousins face to face. The meeting was not a collision. It was a reckoning. Picture it. A forest clearing, 60 years ago. Two hunting parties meet tone from the south, leaner, more lightly built. The other from the north, heavier, broader, older. Neither speaks the other's tongue. But both recognize the threat. This wasn't just a meeting of tribes. It was a meeting of species. And it could have gone either way. Neanderthals evolved in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, shaped by cold climates and brutal terrain. Their bodies were adapted for power-short limbs, barrel chests, thick bones. Their tools were effective but slow to change. Homo sapiens, by contrast, were the newcomer staller, more gracile, with longer-range weapons and faster cultural adaptation. But we weren't better, just different. And difference, in evolution, is destiny. In the early 2000s, geneticists extracted Neanderthal DNA from fossil bone. The results were stunning. Modern humans of non-African descent carry between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA. This wasn't just coexistence. It was interbreeding. We didn't wipe them out. Not entirely. We absorbed them. The Neanderthals didn't vanish. They became part of us. But that raises a deeper question. Why did we dominate? Neanderthals buried their dead. They cared for injured elders. They made jewelry, painted, likely sang. They weren't monsters. They were human. And if fate had shifted slightly, if a cold snap had lasted longer, if our ancestors had faltered, they might have inherited the earth. We could be the extinct ones. They could be digging our fossils. They were not less. They were just not us. So what happened? How did two human species so alike, yet so different collide? And why did only one survive? In Part 2, The World Before Us, we step back in time to meet the Neanderthals on their own terms, before contact, before conflict, before memory. Part 2, The World Before Us. The fire crackles in a limestone cave. Outside, the wind cuts across a frozen valley. Inside, a small group of Neanderthals huddle for warmth. A child plays with a carved bone. An elder mends a spear. Meat roasts, fat sizzling, sending smoke into the dark. This is not a prelude to extinction. This is a home. Long before Homo sapiens set foot in Europe, Neanderthals had already carved out a world of their own. They were not waiting for us. They were thriving. Neanderthals appeared around 400 years ago, evolving from earlier Homo species like Homo heidelbergensis. They spread across Ice Age, Europe, and parts of Western Asia, adapting to the bitter cold of glacial periods and the unpredictable climate shifts of interglacials. They mastered survival in conditions that would crush modern cities. From the Iberian Peninsula to Siberia, from English cliffs to Iraqi caves, they built shelters, hunted megafauna, and raised children. And, despite popular myths, they weren't primitive brutes. They were deeply human. A hunting group returns to camp dragging a bloodied ibex carcass. Spears of wood and stone are carried over shoulders. Children run to meet them, squealing. The meat is shared, not hoarded. Elders eat first, as respect demands. Injured members are fed and tended to. Later, two adults take the children to a cave wall. With ochre pigment, they trace handprints, not for function, for meaning. This is not instinct. This is culture. Neanderthal tools, part of the Mousterian tradition, were remarkably sophisticated. They used prepared core techniques like the Levallois method, striking flakes from stone with precision. They made spears, scrapers, and awls. They even crafted birch pitch glue to bind tool heads. Their minds were capable of planning, forethought, innovation. They weren't inventing new gadgets every decade. But neither were we for most of our species' early history. Progress wasn't absent, it was deliberate. The Ice Age wasn't a single event, it was a cycle. Glacials and interglacials, droughts and floods. Neanderthals adapted again and again. Their stocky build conserved heat. Their large noses humidified cold air. Their hunting strategies evolved based on the Terran ambush in forests, persistence in open plains. They weren't stuck in their ways. They were masters of their world. And that world was brutal. Neanderthal children didn't learn survival in theory. They watched mammoths fall. They saw firelight flicker over frostbitten flesh. They buried siblings. They played beside bones. But they also loved. They taught. They dreamed. To be born Neanderthal was not to be doomed. It was to inherit a lineage that had already survived longer than ours has yet lasted. And for most of that time, they were alone. Until we came. They ruled without rival. They shaped their world. But then into that world came another species. Taller, faster, more numerous. In Part 3, The Arrival, we follow the first waves of Homo sapiens into Neanderthal territory and witness the beginning of a fragile, fateful coexistence. Part 3, The Arrival. A lone figure scans the valley below. He is tall, lean, his skin dark against the pale snow. Behind him, others emerge assailant, cautious, strangers in a frozen land. They are Homo sapiens, newly arrived in Europe. Below them, in caves and forests, another species already lives. This is not invasion. Not yet. It is overlap. For the first time in history, two kinds of humans walk the same land, and neither knows the other exists. Around 60 years ago, small bands of Homo sapiens began moving into Eurasia from Africa. They carried new tools, new behaviors, and a way of thinking shaped by a different world. They followed rivers, coastlines, and game trails slowly, steadily, spreading across the continents. Europe, already inhabited by Neanderthals, became a contact zone. But this wasn't a single clash. It was a slow encounter measured in generations, not battles. And the outcome was anything but simple. A herd of reindeer moves across a snowy field. Two groups of hunters observe and aware of each other at first. One group is Neanderthal, shorter, stronger, silent. The other, Homo sapiens, taller, more lightly built, whispering in tones the Neanderthals don't understand. Their eyes meet. No one moves. A moment of recognition of sameness, of difference. Then, the herd bolts, and the two groups vanish into the trees. They will meet again. Did we war with them? Trade? Interbreed? Avoid? The answer is likely all of the above. In some regions, Neanderthals and modern humans coexisted for thousands of years. In others, the Neanderthals vanish shortly after Homo sapiens appear. Their populations were already low scattered, vulnerable to disruption. We may not have fought them in armies, but we competed. For food, for territory, for future. And in evolution, competition is enough. Archaeological sites like Châtel-Perroni in France show toolkits that blend Neanderthal and Homo sapiens styles. At some burial sites, ornaments appear that resemble modern human traditions found on Neanderthal bodies. Was this imitation? Cultural exchange? Intermarriage? We can't be sure. But it shows this much. They were watching us. and we were watching them. For hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals were the only humans in Europe. Then suddenly, they weren't. Imagine what that meant, the slow realization that you are not unique, that something like you, but not you, is multiplying. Faster. Stronger in number. Strange in speech. Strange in behavior. Familiar enough to unsettle. Alien enough to fear. It must have felt like the beginning of the end. And maybe it was. They met. They learned. They blended. But soon, coexistence would end. One species would remain. The other would vanish. In Part 4, Blending Blood, we explore the genetics, the interbreeding, and the legacy of Neanderthals still alive in us today. Part 4, Blending Blood. A child is born in a cave air, eyes dark, her skin pale, her features a mystery. Her mother is Neanderthal. Her father is Homo sapiens. She is both. And for tens of thousands of years, children like her lived, breathed, and vanished, leaving no names, no language, only traces in our blood. The line between species was never sharp. It was blurred by love, by violence, by survival. And that blur lives on in all of us. For decades, it was believed that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals never interbred, that the two species were separated, divided by biology and behavior. Then came the genomes. In 2010, scientists mapped the Neanderthal genome for the first time. The shock was immediate. Every human today with non-African ancestry carries Neanderthal DNA. Up to 4% of our genetic code comes from them. We didn't just outcompete them, we merged with them. Their extinction was not total. It was partial absorption. In a Siberian cave known as Denisova, a child's tooth is found. It's unlike anything seen before Neanderthal mother, Denisovan father, a hybrid of two extinct humans. Later, other hybrid remains emerged children with one Homo sapiens and one Neanderthal parent. These weren't myths. They were people. They lived, they ate, they died, and their bodies became fossils. But their genethos survived. In us, Neanderthal DNA influences everything from skin tone to immune system responses. Some gene variants help fight viruses. Others are linked to depression, nicotine addiction, even how we respond to altitude or metabolize fats. We didn't just inherit their bone density. We inherited their lives, their struggles, their adaptations, their endurance. They're not gone. They're inside use everywhere. Genomic evidence suggests that interbreeding wasn't rare or isolated. It happened multiple times, in multiple places. The Middle East, Europe, Central Asia. Denisovan DNA survives too, especially in Melanesian and Southeast Asian populations. We are not Homo sapiens alone. We are a mosaic blend of ancient humans, spliced by time and tempered by evolution. And for those who live today, that blend was a survival strategy. The more diverse our ancestry, the better we adapted. That ache in your joints, the way your body responds to pain, even the shape of your skull. Some part of you isn't just you, it's them. Neanderthals never wrote poetry, but they live in the rhythm of your heart. They never built cities, but they walk in your gait. They never saw the world we see now, but they shaped the body that walks through it. You are not their descendant. You are their continuation. But if they're part of us, why did they disappear? What finally pushed them from the earth, even as their blood flowed into ours? In Part 5, The Vanishing, we witness the long, slow fade of a people who once ruled European. Ask why they fell while we rose. Part 5, The Vanishing. The cave is quiet now. No fire burns. No children laugh. The walls are bare. The bones scattered. The footprints faded. Once, this was a home, a hearth, a place where stories were told in gesture, where meat was shared, where lives began and ended. Now, it is still. Across Europe and Asia, one by one, the Neanderthals disappeared. Not in fire, not in blood, but in silence. And the question remains, why? Around 40,000 years ago, Neanderthal populations began to collapse. From the Iberian Peninsula to the Caucasus, from France to the Middle East, their numbers thinned. Caves that had been occupied for millennia fell silent. There is no single grave, no single extinction event. Instead, there is absences sudden, total, final. Why did they vanish while Homo sapiens spread? Theories abound. Few are definitive. But when viewed together, a pattern emerges, a web of pressure that grew too tight to escape. A small group gathers in a forest clearing 5 adults, 2 children. Their winter stores are low. A hunting party returns empty-handed. In the distance, they hear another group, foreign voices. Unfamiliar fire. They huddle close. They do not know it yet, but they are among the last of their kind. Not because they are weak, but because the world has changed around them. And change doesn't wait. Neanderthals were likely outnumbered 10-to-1 by Homo sapiens in many regions. Their social networks were smaller, their trade routes shorter, their tools evolved more slowly. When climate change struck again, they were less able to adapt quickly. Their strong, cold-adapted bodies became liabilities in a warming world. Their hunting strategies suited for megafauna became less effective as large game disappeared. Meanwhile, Homo sapiens traded, strategized, spread. We weren't stronger, just more flexible. And evolution rewards flexibility. Modern models show that even slight demographic disadvantages can doom a species over time. A drop in fertility, a few bad winters, a handful of failed hunts, conflict with rivals, disease. Neanderthals may have simply faded on generation at a time until only memory remained. And then, even that was lost. Until now, somewhere, perhaps in a forgotten valley, the last Neanderthal died. Alone, or surrounded by kin. We'll never know. There was no funeral. But maybe there were tears. Maybe someone watched the fire fade, knowing no new spark would be lit. To be the last of your kind is to carry a silence deeper than extinction. And that silence echoes still. But even in their disappearance, Neanderthals left behind something indelible, no, just in our DNA, but in the spaces they once called home. In Part 6, The Bones and the Caves, we uncover the archaeology, the places, the objects, the signs that reveal who they were and how they lived. Part 6, The Bones and the Caves. A shaft of sunlight cuts through a cave mouth. Below, in the cool dark, a jawbone lies buried in dust-thick, worn, unmistakably human, but not modern. Beside it, stone tools, fire-cracked bone, and red ochre smeared on the walls. This is not just a graveyard. It is a library. And each artifact, each fossil, is a page from a story long silenced but not forgotten. This is how we meet the Neanderthals, through the bones and the caves. Our understanding of Neanderthals was born in fragments literally. In 1856, quarry workers in Germany's Neander Valley uncovered strange bones. Thick, curved, not quite ape, not quite human. At first, they were dismissed, then debated, then feared. They sparked the question, were we alone in our ancestry? Since then, dozens of sites across Europe and Western Asia have revealed Neanderthal life in intimate detail. From the limestone shelters of France to the volcanic caves of Iraq, their world has risen from the soil. Not just bones, but behaviors. Not just tools, but traces of thought. In northern Iraq lies Shanidar Kavia, place of wind and shadow, where 9 Neanderthal skeletons have been found. 1. Shanidar 1 lived into his 40s despite severe injuries, a crushed eye socket, a withered arm, partial deafness. He survived because others cared for him. Another skeleton was buried with clumps of pollen, possibly from flowers. A grave, a ritual, a gesture of memory. Here, deep in the earth, we see not just survival, we see empathy. In sites like La Ferracie, Le Moustier, and El Cedron, archaeologists have uncovered stone tools with specialized edges, perforated shells possibly worn as necklaces, pigment-stained bones, engraved symbols and scratched stone slabs. These aren't accidental. They're intentional. They suggest abstract thinking, symbolic communication, even the beginnings of art. The line between us and them blurs more with each find. 3D reconstructions of Neanderthal skeletons reveal the toll of a hard life healed fractures, worn joints, arthritic spines. They hunted large prey up close often with spears, not projectiles. But they also shared food, sheltered elders, and formed long-term camps. They lived in close-knit groups, bound by blood and memory. This wasn't bestial instinct. It was community. In caves like Brunicle, a circle of broken stalagmites has been found 140 years old, constructed deep in the earth, in darkness, with no clear purpose but meaning. Why build it? We don't know. But that's the point. They weren't like us, but they weren't unlike us. They left messages we're still learning to read. Not in words, but in placement, in pattern, in presence. The bones tell us what they were. The caves tell us who they were. And yet, for all we know, there's more. We don't. In Part 7, The Forgotten Others, we meet the other human species. Denisovans, Floresiensis, and more ghosts of our shared past, rediscovered in the age of genetics and global archaeology. Part 7. The Forgotten Others. A fragment of bone, a single tooth, a sliver of a finger. Not enough to see a face, not enough to hear a voice, but enough to reveal a truth. Neanderthals were not the only other humans. There were more, hidden in shadow, lost in time. And only now, thanks to genetics and archaeology, do we realize how crowded our past really was. This is the story of the Forgotten Others. For most of the 20th century, we imagined human evolution as a straight lineape to us, with Neanderthals as a brief detour. But in reality, the past was a bush, not a ladder. A forest of species, overlapping in space and time. And some we barely know. Only recently, we've discovered that multiple species of archaic humans coexisted, some as mysterious as dreams, others leaving behind bones too small to name, but DNA that echoes in modern blood. In 2008, deep in the Altai Mountains of Siberia, researchers uncovered a finger bone from a young girl in a remote cave. It didn't match Homo sapiens. It didn't match Neanderthals. It belonged to something else. A new species. They called them Denisovans. And with that discovery, everything changed. Their DNA revealed they had interbred with both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. And today, up to 6% of Denisovan DNA survives in modern populations from Southeast Asia and Oceania. They're gone, but they aren't. Thousands of miles south, in the caves of Indonesia and the Philippines, new mysteries emerged. In 2003, on the island of Flores, scientists found the remains of a tiny human species just over 3 feet tall, with a chimp-sized brain. They dubbed her the Hobbit. Homo floresiensis lived until at least 50 years ago, possibly overlapping with modern humans. Later, in Luzon, another small-bodied species was found, Homo luzonensis. How did they get there? How long did they survive? We don't yet know, but they show this. Human evolution wasn't local. It was global. And much of it is still missing. Modern DNA analyses show that our genomes contain ghost lineages, genetic signatures from human species whose bones we have never found. That means there are entire branches of humanity lost to archaeology, but still alive in the code of our cells. The Denisovans were only the beginning. The full picture? Still forming. And perhaps always incomplete. We remember Homo sapiens because we survived. We remember Neanderthals because they were close. But these others? They're almost myth. A tooth. A shard. A twist in our DNA. They didn't build cities, but maybe they spoke, maybe they sang, maybe they laughed. We don't know what language they spoke, if any. But their story is written into us. Not in voice, in blood. So many human species once walked the earth. Now, only one remains. But as we turn to the present, we must ask, what lessons have we inherited from our lost cousins? In Part 8, The Survivors, we explore how Homo sapiens endured not just biologically, but culturally, psychologically, and collectively. Part 8, The Survivors. The wind howls across a high African plain. A band of humans marches across dry grass, thin, tired, but still walking. They've survived drought, predators, fire. They've buried children, lost homes, started again. And they are not unique. Across the world, other groups do the same moving, adapting, enduring. They are Homo sapiens, and they are the last of their kind. But not because they were the strongest, because they were the most resilient. Roughly 70 years ago, Homo sapiens teetered on the edge of extinction. Some estimates suggest there may have been fewer than 10 of us on the planet. But we didn't vanish. We spread. From Africa to Asia, to Australia, to the Americas, across mountains, through deserts, overseas. We adapted to every biome on Earth and changed it in return. How? Why? What made us the survivors? The answer lies not in our bodies, but in our minds. Homo sapiens possessed language true, flexible, symbolic language. We could name things, describe them, imagine them, lie about them, plan for them. With language came cooperation. With cooperation, strategy. With strategy, culture. We built social networks wider than family. We traded. We innovated. We didn't just survive nature. We manipulated it. No other human species, Neanderthal, Denisovan, or otherwise left evidence of such explosive cultural transmission. In Sapiens, ideas could leap from mind to mind and grow. We painted cavastales in ochre and charcoal. We carved figures goddesses, lions, hybrids. We wore shells, buried the dead with grave goods, told stories to the stars. The mind of Sapiens didn't just see the world. It imagined others, other people, other places, other possibilities. We weren't the first to make tools, but we were the first to dream. And that changed everything. Genetic evidence shows that Homo sapiens went through severe bottlenecks, population crashes that nearly erased us. But each time, we rebounded. Why? Because culture allowed us to adapt faster than genes, a new hunting technique, a new form of shelter, a new alliance. Where others perished from slow evolution, we leapt ahead with ideas. Our survival wasn't physical. It was mimetic. We carry the scars of survival, the anxiety, the need for connection, the love of story, the hunger for meaning. We're not just bodies shaped by nature. We're minds haunted by memory. By the time the last Neanderthal died, we were already shaping the planet. And yet, we are still them. Hunters in a world too fast for us. Dreamers in bodies built for survival. We made it. But at what cost? We survived, but we lost everyone else. Now, as we look forward, the question is not just how we endured, but what we owe to those who didn't. In Part 9, The Debt, we ask what it means to be the last human species and what responsibilities come with that legacy. Part 9, The Debt. In a quiet museum corner, a skull rests behind glass. Heavy brow, broad nose, strong jaw. It doesn't smile. It doesn't speak. But it asks, not, what am I? Not, where did I go? It asks you, what did you do with the world we left behind? Because to be Homo sapiens is not just to be the last human standing. It is to be the inheritor of a planet and a past. And with inheritance comes debt. We walk a world once filled with other humans. At least 8 distinct species we know of, possibly more, shared this earth with us. Now, only we remain. And in their bones lie unanswered questions. What would a world of multiple human species look like? What was lost when they vanished? And what part of us did we gain because they were no longer here? We are not just alone in a physical sense. We are culturally alone, cognitively alone, emotionally alone. We don't know what it's like to talk to another kind of human. We ended up telling the story, but it wasn't only ours. Imagine a world where Neanderthals survived, where Homo floresiensis still thrived in island forests, where Denisovans raised families on mountain slopes, where Homo sapiens shared Earth not as rulers but as cohabitants. Would we have learned more about ourselves? Would we have shared ideas, merged myths, grown through dialogue? Or would fear have fractured us? Either way, the world would have been richer. But now, it's silent. And we must ask, what responsibility do we bear? We talk about extinction in numbers, in timelines, in genes. But extinction is also a silencing. Neanderthals had no written language, no digital archives, no monuments. Everything we know about them comes from us. We are their historians. They're only storytellers. If we forget them, they vanish twice. And yet, every time we tell their story truthfully, respectfully, with awe rather than arrogance, we repay a small part of that debt. Anthropologists now argue that understanding extinct human species reshapes how we treat living ones. If Homo sapiens is not unique and not chosen, not destined, but simply one path among many, then every culture, every language, every life today carries weight. There is no more evolved, only still here. That understanding humbles us. And it should. Because survival isn't virtue. It's chance, skill, and timing. We survived. Others didn't. But that doesn't make us better. It makes us responsible. The Neanderthal child, the Denisovan mother, the Hobbit of Flores. They cannot speak for themselves. But we can. Not with pity, not with pride, but with truth. They walked the earth. They shaped the world. They shaped us. And now, we are all that's left to carry their memory. Their names are few. Their bones are rare. Their stories are incomplete. But still they matter. In the final part of our journey, we return to the present not to mourn, but to ask, what now? What does it mean to be the last humans? And how do we honor those who came before? In Part 10, The Inheritors, we face our legacy, our future, and the full weight of our ancient past. Part 10, The Inheritors. A satellite crosses the sky. Beneath it, cities pulse with light. Planes trace ribbons across the stratosphere. Voices travel faster than thunder. Our species touches the moon, edits genes, crafts intelligence. We are Homo sapiens. We are alone. But we weren't always. Behind every step we take stands 1,000 others, now dust, now bone, now us. We are the inheritors of a world once shared. And what we do next will determine whether we were worthy of it. We inherited more than DNA. We inherited choices. The strength to cooperate, the instinct to protect, the fear of the unknown, the urge to create, the longing to remember. All of it coded in us, shaped by others, passed down through time like a torch. When Neanderthals died, their culture ended. Their languages, if they had them, fell silent. But in us, their blood flows still. And with that blood comes a responsibility to know, to honor, and to continue. Every time a child draws on a wall, the spirit of prehistoric art survives. Every time we gather around fire, bury our dead, or look at the stars and wonder why we echo ancient minds, we are not separate from them. We are extensions of them. Their courage, their mistakes, their love, their terror lives in us. Not metaphorically, literally. Every step we take is made on a bridge of bones. To be human is not just to walk upright or wield tools. It is to remember, to imagine, to carry burdens we did not choose and choose not to set them down. As the only surviving humans, we face the test they never reached. What will we become now that we are alone? Will we repeat the cycle or rise above it? Will we use our power to dominate here, to preserve? We are no longer hunted, but we are still responsible. Many believe evolution stopped with civilization. It hasn't. We're still changing genetically, culturally, technologically. But now we guide the change. For the first time in history, a human species has the ability to edit itself, to shape ecosystems, to destroy or preserve species. We are no longer just surviving. We are deciding, and those decisions must be made with 2 million years of memory behind us. That ache in your knees, that warmth in your tears, that fire in your stories? Proof. Proof that you come from a long line of humans who lived, died, and dreamed. Some were called Neanderthal, some Denisovan, some we'll never name. But you are what remains. You are the voice they never got to raise, the builder they never became, the final verse of a song sung by many. You are their answer. What will you do with it? To the ones who came before, we remember you, not as monsters, not as myths, but as us. Different, yes, but not lesser. You shaped our world. You shaped our minds. You shaped our fate. And now we will carry you forward, because we are the inheritors. And your story is not over. It's just begun again.